Thank you, my dear friend, Dr. Ganguly, for having invited me. I'm conscious of the honor, particularly because this is only the second memorial oration in memory of Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. In the title of the talk, Names and Expressions, there is Prasad Mukherjee and the Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation. There is Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay because it is a memorial oration in Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay's name. There is Bengal Renaissance. There is a reference to the expression Atma Nirbhar Bharat. I will try to touch upon all of these individuals and all of these expressions, beginning with Bengal Renaissance. I may sometimes slip into quoting a little bit in Bengali, but please be assured, please rest assured that if I do quote in Bengali, I will do my best to also translate it. Bengal Renaissance. Renaissance, of course, means rebirth. An expression Bengal Renaissance was coined with an obvious allusion to the Italian Renaissance. And the Bengal Renaissance is interpreted as that characterized Bengal, which reflected almost a revolutionary invention in the cultural space, in the social space, in the intellectual space, in the space of art and literature. How do we date the Bengal Renaissance? The most quoted recent books, not an old book, a recent book, is a book by the late Dr. Nitish Sengupta, which is about Bengal and Bengalis. And he dated the Bengal Renaissance from Raja Ram Mohan Roy, end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century, to Tagore, end of the 19th century, second half of the 19th century, first half of the 20th century. So, Nitish Sengupta's identification of the timeline for the Bengal Renaissance. Whatever historians have tried to say about the Bengal Renaissance, you will generally tend to find there is a great deal of emphasis paid to the Tagore family, which of course is right. You will also find that within the Tagore family, a great deal of emphasis is paid to Rabindranath Tagore. And one of the points I want to make subsequently is that there were other members of the Tagore family, other than Rabindranath Tagore, who were also important. Whenever you look at depictions of the Bengal Renaissance, descriptions of the Bengal Renaissance given typically by historians, you will find that science is only occasionally mentioned. Find that entrepreneur, which is very much a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat, is almost never mentioned. And you also find Swami Vivekananda, who to my mind was a very important part of the Bengal Renaissance as I choose to define it, will never be mentioned. Historians of the past, Ramesh Chandra Datta, R.C. Dutt, Ramesh Chandra Dutt, who wrote a book in 1877 called The Literature of Bengal, right in the middle of the Bengal Renaissance, was much more embracive in depictions. At the risk of deliberately provoking people, I would say that historians, if they are Marxist historians or historians who have links or have had links with the Brahma Samaj, have been unkind to depictions of the Bengal. In fact, I go even further and say that in my view, the only proper depiction of the Bengal Renaissance in all of its different dimensions was in a novel. It is a novel written by a novelist, Sunil Gangopadhyay, in Bengali. The novel is called Shei Shomoy. Translated into English as Those Days. If you want an embracive depiction of what went on in Bengal, what specifically went on in Kolkata in the 19th century, it is my suggestion that Shei Shomoy, a novel, is a far better statement and description of the events than many of the histories you will find. Let's ask a question. A physician being defined in the sense of modern medicine, who was Asia's first female physician, not India's, who was Asia's first female physician. The answer is Kadumbini Ganguly, born as Kadumbini. Kadumbini Ganguly, born as Kadumbini. Let me ask a question. Who were the first female graduates in India? The first female graduates in India were Kadumbini Ganguly and Chandramukhi Bose. They became graduates in the year 1883. Why am I mentioning Kadumbini Ganguly and Chandramukhi Bose? Yes, of course, they were the first female graduates in India, but what's so very special? Why am I particularly mentioning them? I'm mentioning them because every time I mention this, people are constantly surprised. These two ladies were not just the first female graduates in India. They were the first female graduates in the entire British Empire. Much before Oxford, much before Cambridge, you will find in the list of names that are there, in the cellular jail in Andaman, number one in that list, Bengal. Number two, Punjab. That came later. 1857 caught the British unawares. It was unexpected, so they did not know how to react, and they took stock. There was an actual committee in 1858 which took stock. And that committee in 1888 resulted in several things. Firstly, it said society requires a vent. There are always grievances, so there must be a vent. Hence, let us give the individuals the opportunity to form their own societies. The Societies Registration Act, under which several societies are still registered in India, goes back to 1860, a conscious decision as a result of 1857. Similarly, that committee recommended that they must be allowed to have their own newspapers and magazines. So the Registration of Books Act of 1867, under which several newspapers and magazines continue to be registered even today, the direct outcome of 1857. In 1857, the thought that if we rule from the plains, we will run into problems. So we must build the hill stations. So every time you go to Darjeeling or Shimla, direct consequence of 1857, they thought we must build a hill railways. So every time you travel by the railways in Kalka or Darjeeling, direct outcome of 1857. If you go to the construction of those railway stations, Charbagh railway station in Lucknow, deliberately constructed to withstand a siege. I don't know how many of you have been inside President's estate, the entire estate. That place can withstand a siege for 3 months. It is self-sufficient. Why am I mentioning this? Societies Registration Act and Registration of Books Act, both of those, they had major roles to play in the Bengal Renaissance. The Bengal Renaissance, of course, was based on the opening up of education. Opening up of English education in particular. Hindu College, established in 1817. That Hindu College later on became Presidency College. Later on, that became today's Presidency University. Hindu College, established in 1817. Before that, Fort William College, established in 1800. Srirampur College, established in 1818. Sanskrit College, established in 1824. Sanskrit College initially only allowed Brahmanas to be admitted. When Vidyasagar became the principal of Sanskrit College between 1851 and 58, that was the first time non-Brahmin boys were allowed. But pause. I referred earlier to the base of Kolkata's population, 130,000. But the Bengal Renaissance was not driven by that entire population. It was driven by the educated segment of society. We had an education commission 1881-82 known as the Hunter Commission. And today we have forgotten what the system was then. After school, you did not really have a school leaving exam. You had an entrance examination to be admitted to the University of Kolkata. After the entrance exam, you had a FA, first degree in arts. Then you had a BA, bachelor's degree in arts. Then you had a MA, master's degree on arts. From the Hunter Commission, we know that in 1857 to 1881, 1857 to 1881, the complete pool of graduates or undergraduates, as we call it in India, was about 3,500. That's it. 1857 to 1881, pool of graduates / undergraduates was 3,000 or 3,000. Not it was driven essentially by 40,000. It has saying anything that is particularly provocative because it is fact. The Bengal Renaissance was fundamentally a Hindu phenomenon. It's not a Brahmana phenomenon because, as I told you earlier, a lot of non-Brahmanas were admitted in various educational institutions, including Sanskrit College. But it was a Hindu phenomenon. Understandably, I said it was a function of education. Muslims in Bengal weren't particularly educated. Yes, from 1911, let me give you some figures. 1911, literate males. 1911 census, literate males. Not counting women, literate males. For Hindus, the figure was, and remember this was 1911, 20.3%. For Muslims, 7.7%. So 20.3% for Hindus, 7.7% for Muslims. Education differential clearly. So you do not expect the Bengal Renaissance to be driven by Muslims. Perfectly understandable that it should be driven by Hindus. Fine. But think of this. Those who are familiar with the history will know that between 1937 to 1947, Bengal, whenever I say Bengal, this of course means undivided Bengal. Between 1937 to 1947, Bengal had prime ministers of Bengal. And there were 3 prime ministers of Bengal. 1937 to 1947, Bengal had 3 prime ministers. And I have already remarked on the fact that Muslims were relatively uneducated. And understandably, in the political system, you needed to be educated at that time to rise. What were the names of these 3 prime ministers of Bengal? A.K. Fazlul Haq, Khwaja Nazimuddin, H.S. Surawarti. It is something worth thinking about. But let me not digress. Education was fundamentally, when I'm talking about the Bengal education, was fundamentally about Western education. Western education meant an exposure to Christianity. And therefore, it was a clash of civilizations. It was not really a clash of civilizations in any violent sense, but it was a clash of civilizations. And initially, there was a lot of hesitation, at least by some people. Initially, there were a lot of people not very proud of being Hindus. They felt very defensive. A lot of people who were identified with the young Bengal movement of Hindu college centered around Henry Louis Dirosio actually turned Christian. The who turned Christian, although we should remember him today for having translated what is called Thakur Thandidi Thole, stories of narrated by grandparents. Lal Bihari Dey, despite having become a Christian, despite having become a missionary, actually translated them as fairy tales of Bengal. There was the Reverend Krishnamohan Banerjee, who became a Christian. Ramtonu Lahiri, who gave up his sacred thread, his upavit, as a protest against what he perceived to be the evils of Hinduism. There was the Brahma Samaj, old Brahma Samaj, the Sadharan Brahma Samaj, but the Navavidhan Brahma Samaj under Keshav Chandra Sen. At that time, it's changed now. At that time, now it's more or less the same. The norms followed, the rituals followed by the Navavidhan under Keshav Chandra Sen, they are almost a mirror image of Christian church rituals. There was Mike Madhusudan Dotto, who also turned Christian, initially in English, He wanted to become another Milton. He wrote poems like I Sigh for Albion's Distant Shore. His first play was about Sangyukta and Prithviraj, and it was called My Fair Lady, written in English. The excesses of young Bengal were depicted in a play that Michael wrote when he from English to Bengali. And it was called, I don't think it's ever been translated, I have no idea on it, you know, Ekei ki bole shobhota. Translated into English, it says, is this civilization? So a lot of people who were exposed to education, they turned away from Hinduism, they turned towards the Brahma Samaj, different variants, they turned towards the Theosophist movement, and the Theosophist movement was quite influential in Bengal towards the end of the 19th century. But a lot of them, and this is really a characteristic of the Bengal Renaissance, is their return. They rediscovered their past. Michael, as I said, started to write in Bengali. One of his famous poems runs, and I will translate it only loosely. It's enough Bengali, so most people will understand it. He bongo bhand tabo bibidha raton tashabe abod ami অবহেলা করি পরধন লোভে মত্ত করিনু ভ্রমণ পরদেশে ভিক্ষাবৃত্তি কুক্ষণে আচরি. Oh Bengal, you have a treasure of many jewels, but I am ignorant, and therefore I have neglected all of this in a search for someone else's wealth. I have traveled in other countries like a beggar. And so it goes on. Every time I read this, I am reminded actually of something that Bhartrihari wrote. No idea whether Michael ever read Bhartrihari. I doubt he ever did. Since this is in Sanskrit, I am not going to bother to translate it. Someone else will. And this particular thing by Bhartrihari that I am reminded of every time I read Michael's He Bongo Bhandare Tavo Vividha Raton is Bhrantam Deshan Aneka Durga Visham Praptam Na Kinchit Phalam Takta Patikula Uchitang Seva Krita Kritva Nishphala Bhuktang Mana Vivarjitang Paradehe Ashankaya Kakavat. I've gained the sense, the sentiment is the same. I've traveled in many countries of fruits, giving up my own pride. I've served in someone else's house in the hope of something. Kakavat, like a crow. The Renaissance, therefore, as I said, was about rediscovering the legacy, rediscovering the treasure that India is, rediscovering Atmanirbhar Bharat, generating the self-confidence in that clash of civilizations. That is what the Bengal Renaissance was about. There is a quote that is ascribed to Gopal Krishna Gokhale. What Bengal thinks today, India thinks tomorrow. Everyone quotes it. I should tell you that I have searched for the origins of this. Where did Gopal Krishna Gokhale write this? Where did Gopal Krishna Gokhale say this? I've not been able to find it. But it does sound like the kind of thing that Gopal Krishna Gokhale would have said. In the introduction, Dr. Anirban Ganguly mentioned that I am interested in the Rama and the Mahabharata Purana. Let me quickly mention this. all 19th century, mid 19th century onward, Kali Singho, who was the central character fictionalized in Sunil Ganguly's book that I mentioned, novel that I mentioned, Kali Singho translated the unabridged Mahabharata into Bengali. The Bardhavan edition, the Eastern edition of the Mahabharata, the Bardhavan edition was published in Sanskrit and with a Bengali translation. There is a translation of the Mahabharata in English. Kishori Mohan Ganguly. Publisher was Pratap Chandra Roy. But before that English language translation, Pratap Chandra Roy published a Bengali translation of the entire unabridged Mahabharata. From Srirampur, William Carey and Joshua Marshman produced the first unabridged English translation of the Valmiki Ramayana. Hemchandra Bhattacharya produced an unabridged translation of the entire Ramayana in Bengali. And something that everyone attending a Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Foundation, Research Foundation event should know is Ganga Prasad Mukhopadhyay, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukhopadhyay's grandfather, did his own translation of the Ramayana in Bengali. Something people seem to have forgotten. Ganga Prasad Mukhopadhyay actually did his own composition of the Ramayana in Bengali verse. Many of these names are mentioned. They were educated in a Western sense. In Bengal, traditional Sanskrit learning, there's a place known as Bhatpara, which actually means Bhattacharya Bhatpara. There's a person there, Pandit, Sanskrit Pandit named Panchanan Tarkaratna. Second half of the 19th century, he lived till the first half of the 20th century. He translated Dharma Shastra texts, Valmiki Ramayana, Adhyatya Ramayana, and several Puranas. Remember, at that time, copyright legislation did not exist, not in the sense we know it. So once something had been translated, everyone was free to print it. Today, if you go to Kolkata, College Street, and you want to buy an edition of the Puranas, Sanskrit Bengali translation, I can guarantee you, say, Panchanan Tarkaratna Sampadito, edited by Panchanan Tarkaratna. All towards the end of the 19th century, 20th century. There was Asiatic Society. Well, Asiatic Society went through various names, name changes, but fundamentally it was Asiatic Society, established in 1784. They published a Bibliotheca Indica, which went on even till the 20th century, but the early ones were the more interesting ones. Whole range of Sanskrit texts published, Puranas, Dharma Shastra texts, translations done of Vishnu Puran into English, all unabridged, by Horace Hayman Wilson, of Markandeya Puran by translations. People will invariably mention Sacred Books of the East, Max Muller. As the title implies, Sacred Books of the East by Max Muller was not only about Hinduism. If you look at the Hinduism text translated under the Sacred Books of the East series, they were fundamentally Vedas, Upanishads, Dharma Shastras. But there's something else that most people don't seem to be aware of, that is called the Sacred Books of the Hindus. The Sacred Books of the Hindus was published by Panini Press in Allahabad. decades.
শান্তনু বাবু, আপনি একটু মিউট করে দিন। Please continue.
First 2 decades of the 20th century, of course, Panini Press was in Allahabad, but many of those who translated it were actually Bengalis. Tagore family. I mentioned earlier the reference to Rabindranath Tagore. I also said that Rabindranath Tagore was important. The Tagore family was not only about Tagore. Dr. Anirban Ganguly mentioned Tagore's views on nationalism. What about Rabindranath Thakur's views on nationalism? What about Rabindranath Thakur's translation, not translation, Rabindranath Thakur's book Raj Kahini, based on Todd's Annals and Antiquities of Rajasthan, which spread this sense of nationalism. What about the Bengal School of Art, which is given by Rabindranath Thakur? How many of you have heard of Sharola Devi Chaudhurani? I'm pronouncing it in the Bengali way. Sharola Devi Chaudhurani. Educated in Kolkata, Rabindranath Thakur's niece, spent most of her working life in Mysore. Later on, Rambhuj Chaudhuri. There are around, I'm going off on a tangent, around 17 Sanskrit universities in India. Unfortunately, two of them teach in Sanskrit. Language Sanskrit is not taught in Sanskrit. It is taught in Tamil, it is taught in Bengali, it is taught in Hindi, and I have no idea, maybe sometimes it is also taught in English. What few universities where it is taught in Sanskrit is the Sanskrit University of Tirupati. When I was invited to deliver a talk at the Sanskrit University in Tirupati, the Vice Chancellor told me there are around 200 Bengali students here studying Sanskrit. They would like to meet you after your book is over. I said, 200 Bengali students studying Sanskrit in Tirupati? Why are they studying Sanskrit in Tirupati? Why can't they study somewhere else? Why can't they study in Kolkata? So I met them. I said, why do you go to Tirupati to study? Why don't you study in Kolkata? There is Sanskrit College, University of Kolkata has a Sanskrit department. They said, well, look, in Kolkata, Sanskrit is taught in Bengali. In Kolkata, Sanskrit is taught in the Bengali script, using the Bengali script. It is not taught using the Devanagari script, and therefore, become familiar with the Bengali script, we'll have difficulties later on, and therefore we prefer to study in the Devanagari script. I suddenly do this. Sharola Devi Chaudhurani wrote her autobiography in Bengali called Jiboner Jhora Pata, which has been translated into English as The Scattered Leaves. If you read her autobiography written at that time, she makes the point. Sanskrit must be taught in Sanskrit, and one of the problems with Sanskrit teaching is that it is not taught in Sanskrit. And because she was a Bengali, she wrote, Sanskrit must be taught in Devanagari, not in the Bengali script. Sharola Devi writing there. One should read Sharola Devi Chaudhurani's autobiography to find out what she thought of Bankim Chandra vis-a-vis Rabindranath Tagore insofar as views on nationalism are concerned. That's the reason I said earlier, if we are equating or defining nationalism as per Rabindranath Tagore's understanding of nationalism was not necessarily true of the entire Tagore family. We think Vande Mataram all the time. Who set the tune? Who set the tune for Vande Mataram? The first tune for Vande Mataram was by Sharola Devi Chaudhurani. For many of Rabindranath Tagore's songs was set by Sharola Devi Chaudhurani. We have the area of science. I mentioned towards the beginning that science was rarely mentioned. We had Shutendranath Bose, Prafulla Chandra Rai, Meghnad Shaha, Jagdishwar Bose, Upendranath Brahmachari, Prashant Chandra Mahal. In the introduction, Anirban Ganguly mentioned that I am the president of the Indian Statistical Institute. The Indian Statistical Institute has an emblem. An emblem has a Sanskrit motto. Translated into English, it says unity in diversity. Once I became the president of the ISI, I went around asking, where is the motto from? Sanskrit mottos come from somewhere or the other. Which Upanishad is this from? Or is it from some Puran? Is it from the Ramayana? Is it from the Mahabharata? No one knew. I still don't know where that motto comes from. And I am convinced that that motto does not exist in any of our sacred texts. Prashanta Chandra Maharaj, who was a statistician, knew enough to write his own motto for the Indian Statistical Institute when he set it up. And I'm convinced, I'm not certain, but I'm reasonably certain that this was actually discussed by C. Mahalanobis himself. The broad point in this is that all these people were actually polymaths. Each and every one of them. And one of the defining characteristics of the Bengal Renaissance was this polymath kind of attribute that characterized all of these people. Let me now turn to Atmanirbhar Bharat. It was divided in 1905, reunified in 1911. In that period, there was a Swadeshi movement, Swadeshi entrepreneurship, Swadeshi business. Much before Swadeshi was brought to the forefront by Gandhiji. There was Bengal Chemicals. And in the midst of this, there is a song that many people in Bengal probably still recollect, at least the older generation will recollect. Maer dao mota kapor mathaye tule nere bhai din tini maje to der tar beshiyar shadhunai. A song written by a poet, songwriter named Rajanikanto Sen. Literally loosely it says, except the rough cloth produced given to you by your mother is miserable and poor. She cannot give you anything more than that. When was the first fountain pen in India produced? If you look at the records, This was concerning K.V. Ratnam. K.V. Ratnam was a family of goldsmiths who lived in Rajamundry. And K.V. Ratnam, he was introduced to Gandhiji. They used to make gold articles. Gandhiji said, why don't you make something useful? Why don't you make... And so they started making fountain pens. The initial fountain pen was refused by Gandhiji because it was not enough. He accepted one in 1935. So depending on how you date it, the first Indian fountain pen was produced 1932, 1933 to 1935. Official records. Every time, not every time, often when a visiting dignitary arrives, he presented a Ratnam pen. That same model, Ratnam 302. Often when an Indian dignitary goes abroad and has some and wants to offer a gift, it is a Ratnam 302. I repeat, 1932, 33, 1935. In 1900, a Bengali gentleman, and Saha, Radhanath Saha, established Lakshmi pens and began to produce fountain pens. Today, ask about Japanese fountain pens, people will mention Sailor as a brand. There was a gentleman in Yokohama, one of his sailor friends brought him a pen from England. This gentleman in Yokohama asked, if the British can make fountain pens, why can't the Japanese? And in 1911, he set up Sailor Pens and named it Sailor in recognition of his sailor friend. Well, in 1911, Radhanath Saha started to produce fountain pens. A few years down the line, there was someone named Fanindranath Gupta, Fanindranath Gupta actually, who made fountain pens around 1925. Both of these gentlemen much before Ratnam. So again, I want to emphasize Renaissance was also about business, enterprise, entrepreneurship, about Atmanirbhar Bharat. And the historians who describe the Bengal Renaissance will rarely mention it. Let me now turn to Bankim Chattopadhyay. Was educated in the Ramakrishna Mission School, Narendrapur, just outside Kolkata. Today is regarded as Kolkata. That was the second school I went to. The first school I went to was a school in Shillong, St. Peter's, which was a Western missionary school. Western missionary school. We learned the Lord's Prayer in the morning. We were not allowed to speak in Bengali. We were supposed to speak in English. The history was British history, or actually English. Even today, I know that Magna Carta was signed in 1215. I know that the Battle of Agincourt was fought in 1415. My wife asked that I know such a great deal about the Bible that I can recite the Lord's Prayer by heart, that I know the name of every English monarch until the time of the 100 Years' War. Right? 100 Years' War? Because the changed. Instead of learning the names of I started to learn the names of Mughal emperors. I wasn't taught about, I do know, I wasn't taught much about South Indian dynasties or the Ahom kings. But in a caricature of learning the names by heart of the English kings, into the Mughal emperors. But that's irrelevant. Consequently, till the age of 10, I could not Bengali. I could not write. I could, but I could not read Bengali. I could not write. I could speak Bengali. So they must read novels out to me. Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. A fact that is forgotten, that the first Indian novel published in English was Bankim Chandra's Rajmohan's wife. So my mother used to read out to me. Dukesh Nandini, Nalini, Raj Singh, Anandamot, Chaudhurani, Sitaram, all of them resonating with nationalism. When here, Puthik ki path harai sort of ki path harai oh travel way. This is Kopal Kundola. Gramer Nam Padachinno, the village is called Padachinno, the first lines of Anandamot. Rangaraj, Rangaraj, bring the boat. Devi Chodani. 2 years ago, I was supposed to deliver on Sanskrit poetry. Yeah. I wanted to quote from Jayadev's Govindam and wanted to say, Dhira Samire Tire Vasati Vane Vanamal. I said, Dhira Samire Tatini Tire Vasati Vane Varanari. I will not mention her name, all of you was in the audience. She corrected me and said, Bibek, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm sorry. Inadvertently, not quoted from James Gita Govinda, I had quoted something that is borrowed, not exactly parody is the wrong word to use, that is from Bankim Chandra's Anandam. And I grew up not only with these, I grew up Gopal Kundola, Radharani, Chandrasekhar, all the novels. In Bankim Chattopadhyay, Ramesh Chandra Datta, whose name I mentioned later on, wrote Maharashtra Jivan Prabhat about Maharashtra, about the kings of Maharashtra, Rajput Jivan Shandha about the kings of Rajasthan, all of this feeding into that nationalism. An anecdote, there was a gentleman known as Damodar Mukhopadhyay, who was also a novelist. Wrote a novel. Damodar Mukhopadhyay came along and wrote a sequel. Mukhopadhyay came along. So once upon a time, someone came to Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay and said, Bankim Babu, অনেকদিন আর উপন্যাস লেখেননি Babu, why a novel for a long time? Chandra responded, Ore Dandayan Damodar, উপন্যাস লিখিলে উপসংহার লিখিয়া ফেলিবে. Damodar is standing there. If I write a novel, he will immediately write a sequel. The Bengali language, familiar with the Bengali language, is naturally a very delicate language. It's a very sweet language. It is easy to write poetry, but it is very difficult to write powerful prose or powerful poetry in Bengali. In some way, there are only 2 people who have written powerful prose in Bengali. In my subjective, powerful prose in Bengali are Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay and Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda in English. By and large, yes, he wrote in English, he lectured in English, but the phenomenal book he wrote Prachopasha, translated into English as unbelievable prose. And so far as poetry is concerned, again, to my subjective way of thinking, only two people have written powerful poetry in Bengali. And Kaji Nazrul. Otherwise, it's all very delicate. Bankim Chandra was also a trained lawyer. He edited Bangodarshan. And his essays, just his novels, are phenomenal. Phenomenal. There is one particular, there are several which are about Malakanto. Malakanto is a harmless kind of man, lives on opium, affing. There is something called Kamalakante Jaban Mundi, which is Kamalakanto being summoned as a witness, and it is hilarious. It's a parody of the British justice system. What is something like Kamalakante Jaban Mundi is in the textbooks in Bangladesh. It's not in the textbooks, not in West Bengal. Chandra had views on all things. He wrote a book called Shab. He translated it. It should be floating around on the net. I translated it for the Liberty Institute for some years ago. I believe it's floating around on the net, the translation. Beautiful explanation of Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage. Arrived on the scene. Everyone who believes in Marxism should read what Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay had to say about ideals of equality. Bhagavad Gita, and perhaps more Krishna Charitra, which has translated into English. Krishna's character, Krishna's conduct. Worldview. The Statesman newspaper started in 1875. Soon after the Statesman newspaper started, there was a Shraddha ceremony held in 1882 at the Shobha Bazar Rajbari. At that time, the General Assembly's institution, which later on became Scottish Church College, was a gentleman named Reverend William Hastie. Reverend William Hastie. He asked that a Shraddha ceremony should be held. What a nasty letter to the states. In response to that, Bankim Chandra wrote a letter. He did not initially sign it as Bankim Chandra, he signed it as Ramchandra. And this exchange of letters went on. Read those letters to understand Bankim Chandra's version of Desh, country, nationalism, dharma. The way we sing it is understand Bankim Chandra without Abola can Tumi Vidya, Tumi Dharma, Tumi Riti, Tumi Marmo, Tumari Pratima Godi Mandire Mandir. Without this, I don't think one can understand Bankim Chandra. Without this, I don't think we can understand Atmanirbhar Bharat. I don't think we can understand the Bengal Renaissance if we exorcise dharma. I said earlier that some Christianity. I said earlier that some people turn to the Brahma Samaj. I said earlier some people turn to the Theosophical Society. All had some underpinning of dharma. Dharma, yah dharyate sah dharma, what holds up is dharma. Without dharma, you have nothing. And if I have a secular history of the Bengal Renaissance, I am doing gross injustice to what the Bengal Renaissance was. Ism suggests to me dogmatism, some ideology. I think the right use is Hindutva, because that TVA has a sense of truth about it, etymological. And papers, book, variety of Hinduism, Swami Vivekananda's variety of Hinduism, Sri Aurobindo's variety of Hinduism. I personally find these are meaningless papers, meaningless books. The characteristic of Hindutva is it is empirical in nature. Vivekananda often said, it depends on you. You have a certain perspective, and because it's based on your empirical, it is not the case that your perspective in any sense is superior to my perspective. We sing Vande Mataram. Why do we sing Vande Mataram collectively? Those of you who know Sanskrit will know that I use the word Vande is the singular. When it is plural, it is Vandamahe. Vande Mataram is meant to be sung in the singular. And indeed, Satyananda, Shattananda in Andamot sings it alone. And to me, that's all for Vande, it is never Vandama. To go back to a point that I earlier mentioned, because I mentioned Swami Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda is also a part of the Bengal Renaissance. I look up the Wikipedia entry and I will find Vivekananda described as a Hindu monk. I read Prachyo Paschat to East and West, or I read lectures from Colombo to Almora. Is that about a Hindu monk? Is that about a Hindu priest? That a so-called Hindu monk called Swadesh Mantra, translated into English as modern India. I will translate it. The translation is available, so this bit I will only take Bengali. Once upon a time, used to be familiar with it. He Bharat bhulio na tomar nari jati radosho Shita Savitri Damayanti, but that's towards the middle. Atmanirbhar Bharat. Read the last part. That is what Atmanirbhar Bharat is. What is the first part? I will not translate this. Anirban will translate it later. Hey Bharat, ei Paranubad, Paranukaron, পরমুখাপেক্ষা এই দাস সুলভ দুর্বলতা এই ঘৃণিত জঘন্য নিষ্ঠুরতা এই মাত্র সম্বলে তুমি উচ্চার করিবে last lines towards the last ভারতের স্বর্গ ভারতের কল্যাণ আমার this I said about encounter with was about a clash of civilizations. I said earlier, Renaissance was about a pride in history, pride in legacy, pride in Sanskrit. The fact that Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee much later ensured that address in the University of Kolkata would be delivered in Bengali. That's also the Bengal Renaissance. The Mahabharata has been translated in a British form into English thrice. Kishore Mohan Ganguly, Manmathanath Dutt and I. Two people who have translated both the Mahabharata and Valmiki Ramayana into English, Manmathanath Dutt and I. Manmathanath translator, I wrote a book which is a biography of sorts about him. And he quoted words involuntarily, and involuntarily he quoted Macaulay, who remembers Macaulay as a poet? Who remembers Lays of Ancient Rome? Who remembers Horatius, Macaulay's poem? For the ashes of his fathers and for the temples of his gods. That is what the Bengal Renaissance was. After the hesitation, a comfort with the West, assimilating the West, learning from the West, but also this pride in the history, the legacy, the pride in Bengali, all of this as part of the legacy. What was the precondition? If I look at Bengal today, education may be a necessary condition. It is not a sufficient condition. A prerequisite was the breaking down of the silence. I mentioned all of them, they were polymaths. A prerequisite was curiosity. The entire education system creates silos today everywhere, not just break them. The Bengal Renaissance was about the past, the present. And one of the things worries about is you keep future if you ignore the past. Weave seamlessly into the present. That is what the Bengal Renaissance. The Bengal Renaissance, as I emphasized more than once earlier, was also about dharma, because that is what holds up society. Thank you very much.